On the morning of September the 11th, I showed up at the office at my normal time, about 7:15, and did whatever my normal habits were at that time of day. Morning coffee, hello to this person, that person, and back to my office probably by 8 o'clock, and sitting, opening emails, or signing some checks, whatever the normal process was that day.
That morning was just like a regular morning. It was a beautiful day, just walking in, coming out of the PAR train, coming upstairs. It was really a nice day. Came upstairs, had my breakfast, addressed all my emails.
I arrived in the office at about 7:30. The first thing I needed to do was fax over the daily figures from New York from the day before. I was busy faxing things. I was sitting at my desk. I think I had 2 faxes on the way over to London.
Beautiful sunny day, and there's always a spectacular view usually from there, and we were going about our day, and there's a lot of bantering amongst the guys on the desk and stuff, and a lot of bantering back and forth.
These colleagues all worked here in the South Tower of the World Trade Center. They worked for a company called Eurobrokers. It was based on the 84th floor. It acts as a broker for international financial institutions. This is its new trading floor, but the one in the South Tower looked very similar. At the same time as they were arriving in the South Tower, another group of colleagues was arriving for work in the North Tower. They worked for the May Davis Group, a much smaller company specializing in investment banking. It was based on the 87th floor. For them too, the day began perfectly normally.
September 11th started for me. I was walking to work. I live on 44th Street, right by the UN. And Owen calls me in the morning, Owen May, the chairman of the firm. And just going over what I had to do. I had a meeting that morning, and we talked, and I got to Grand Central Station, which is, 3 stops from the office. And I get onto the train. I get out of the train, and I remember just how beautiful a day it was. It was just beautiful.
So I got dressed, got ready, walked the dog, got the coffee, jumped on the train, and went to work. Stopped. I got some fruit along the way. I got a big cup of tea because I was so sick. And I proceeded. I went up the escalator, the elevator, and I went into my office. I had some tea, and we were all just laughing, joking around like an ordinary day.
I arrived on September 11th about 8:15, actually. I think I was probably 10 minutes late because the night before was the first Monday Night Football game, which I remember. I ordered my breakfast. I remember sitting at my desk. My partner Hong arrived. Some of my younger apprentices were in the office as well.
Adam, who I worked for, was on the Atkins diet, so he ordered eggs and potatoes, and that was free potatoes for me every morning for breakfast. So I just sat down, went behind the desk to check my email, like I did every morning. Was eating my breakfast, just basic office banter, how was the night before, making fun of me for being late, just, everyday stuff that we did, eat your breakfast, let's go, we have to work. And I remember I reached over the desk because the garbage can was on the other side of the desk to throw out the container of eggs, and that's pretty much when I felt the boom.
Just a regular day, so we thought. Got to the train station in Morris Plains about 6:30, hopped on the train. I was in Hoboken, got to the World Trade Center, 8:15 in the morning, went downstairs to Akbar's, got my morning coffee, made my way up to the office, was at my desk by 8:30. I was drinking the coffee, checking my email. 8:46 is when the day changed.
actually had my feet up on the desk, which is something I don't often do, and I was just kind of lying back. I forget what we were talking about at the moment that the plane struck. But all of a sudden, there was just this tremendous shaking, rumbling. It was more of a... The feeling was so overwhelming that it almost wasn't a feeling as much as a sound vibration. Everything started shaking. Little knickknacks were falling off the desk.
Shockwave went right through you. You could feel it. It knocked a lot of people to the ground. I think I got knocked over, at least onto my desk. I don't remember falling to the floor, but at least falling onto my desk. Laterally, you know, you're pretty stable in a chair, so it was pretty ferocious. And I remember the ceiling rippling across sideways. So if I'm facing southwest, the explosion's coming this way, and the plane had actually come in from behind me and went through the building towards that side. And there's just like a ripple effect of the ceiling tiles with the shockwave just bursting out of the ceiling and coming down.
American Airlines Flight 11, with 92 people and 10,000 gallons of aviation fuel on board, struck the North Tower between the 93rd and 98th floors. The offices of the May Davis Group were on the 87th floor, 6 levels below.
And the vibration lasted long enough that I stood up from my desk and I ran under the doorway of my office. I had enough time to pick up one of my apprentices and make him stand under there with me.
I remember logging off my computer. For some reason, I felt I had to say what was on there. And ran forward about 25 feet to see the other L, you know, the office is L-shaped, so see around the corner, just a gout of flame coming out, dark orange and black with chunks of what looked to be like offices, just chunks of offices flying out into space. We're on the 87th floor, so we're up about 1,000 feet. So big objects flying through space look like they're almost weightless, just, you know, an indescribable scene of just chunks of building flying out into space.
And all you saw was fireballs. I mean, right in front of you, smoke. It just wrapped around. We had all windows, so you just saw it wrap around the whole building. I thought, what I thought were briefcases or suitcases falling from the sky, bodies just falling from the sky. I was in so much shock that my body just shook, and I was like, no, this is a bad dream. I'm having a dream. And then I just, you know, when you play with your eyes and you opened your eyes again, and I saw John Paul, and John Paul was like, call your family and tell them we're okay. Everybody call their family and tell everybody that you're okay. And I walked over to, the smoke was coming in, so I got really scared because I was so sick. That bad cough, bronchitis. And I tried to kick Owen's office door open, and the phone rang, and it was Owen.
Owen May, the chairman of the company, was phoning from his car. He was stuck in traffic.
As I looked underneath my rearview mirror, I saw flames busting out of Tower 1. I got out my car and said, holy whatever, and was afraid, didn't know what quite to do, and now I'm nervous, and my first thought was a terrorist put a bomb upstairs and blew out the floor. But then I questioned and said, why would a terrorist do that? Maybe not. I'm not quite. I don't know. But it looked like there was a bomb. I immediately called up to the office, and at that point in time, I got Joanne on the phone, and I said, Joanne, is everything all right up there? Knowing that everything was not okay.
I says, Owen, there's something going on. He goes, I know. I says, what's going on? He goes, I don't know. I don't know. I was like, listen, Owen. He wanted to know, who's up with you? Who's there with you? I go, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of us here. Me, Adam, John Paul. I tried to name everybody's name, but I just had to hang up the phone. I had to get out of there. I was like, Owen, there's smoke all over. He goes, baby, just calm down.
I turned and called my girlfriend. I told her, you know, something happened. I don't know what. You just got to call. I'm okay. You know, if you hear anything, I have my cell phone on me. Just call me and everything will be okay. At that point, we still thought nothing happened. We didn't know.
At first, we planned on staying up there. So I remember looking around for a fan in the office, running around trying to find a fan so we could, you know, clear up the air a little bit. And I remember Harry trying to find a chair or something to break the window. And then someone stopped him, told him, you know, let's just get out of here.
Harry Ramos was the company's head trader. He lived with his wife and 2 small sons in the suburbs of Newark, New Jersey.
I decided to stay home with the kids. I was tired from the day before. We had just celebrated my son's birthday. And also, I was very tired from my mother had just passed away September the 1st. So I was very tired, and I decided to stay home that day with the children. Harry called and said good morning, and I told him that I decided to stay home in bed with the kids and just relax. And he said okay, and that he would call me a little later. Actually, I was in bed with the children, and the phone immediately rang once again, and it was Harry. And Harry said, Mick, don't panic, I'm fine, but something just hit the World Trade Center. I immediately, and he also mentioned, he said he had to go.
With Harry in the North Tower was Hong Zhu, another May Davis employee. He'd originally come from communist China.
Some people said, "Oh, it's bad. We got to get out of here," and I said, "Well, I want to stay here, wait for help." Anyway, no one else seemed to agree with me, and I believe Adam actually asked me if I have a T-shirt. I said no, and he had a T-shirt inside his shirt, and he pulled off the T-shirt and split it into 3 pieces and poured some water onto all of them, and gave me 1 piece and said, "Go." I said, I hesitated, and some people, I believe, started exiting the office. And what I did is I called 911.
It seems like it took a few minutes to kind of just get everybody together. My partner, Hong, refused to come out. He said that he was going to stay and wait for the rescue workers to come up or the police to come up. We moved out into the stairwell, and I noticed right away that where the men's bathroom was, it wasn't there anymore. There was this just giant void, almost V-shaped, where the door used to be, crevice going straight down, and smoke was coming out. And that hole attached itself, I remember, back into our office where our kitchen was and our conference room was. I actually remember before we walked out that there was no kitchen and there was no conference room. There was just this giant hole in the office. I don't know how far down it went.
At no point at least I didn't feel like at any point my life was in danger. You know, the worst was over. We had a big bomb. It's a very solid building. Even a plane could fly into the building and withstand it. You know, that's how they build it.
Right before I walked out of the office, I had that cup of tea. I want you to know. It was laying down. It fell when the plane hit the building. I put it back up. I said, I better put this cup of tea because I'm going to have to come back here tomorrow and clean up this mess.
And I said, you know, everyone, single file like in school, put your hand on the next guy's shoulder and we'll all get out of this thing together. We'll make sure everybody gets out together. And we had made our masks from T-shirts, and, you know, and by the time we got back out again, we really needed it. The smoke was bad.
There was so much, I guess, terror in the hallways that we actually walked past the fire escape and kind of had to turn around and double back until we found it, and we got in the fire escape. And I remember we jammed the door open with the fire hose in case the lower exits were locked, and we wanted to make sure we had a way out because the doors lock once you go in.
I called 911, and the phone is ringing, but no one answered. And I thought probably things are very bad. If the 911 system is not responding, I'd better get out.
So Hong left and started making his way down. Meanwhile, Owen was still outside.
I had my car sitting in the middle of West Street, and now I'm trying to figure out, how do I get to the building? How do I get onto the plaza? I know my people are up there. I have no idea how many people are up there, because it's at that point in time that people are coming up. We'll be traveling upstairs. I had spoke to Mike Jacobs at about 8:20 that morning when I was calling around, and I told him to meet me at the front part of the lobby, and he was supposed to meet me there at 9 o'clock. So I knew he was going to be at work early, so I figured he would probably go upstairs to check his email.
So I go in, I miss the first elevator. You know, there's 2 elevators that I have to take to the 87th floor. That's the floor that we worked on. And there's a sky lobby, what's known as a sky lobby at 78. And I run to the elevator, and it shuts right in my face. 2 elevators, you know, just I'm like, hold it, hold it, hold it, and it shuts right in my face. All right, take the next elevator. I go in. As soon as the doors close, the plane hits. Now, we didn't know it was a plane that was hitting. You know, it felt like the elevator went up maybe 3, 4, 5 flights. And it felt like the elevator cord snapped. So when we came, it wasn't like it was shooting down, like you were coming 50 flights down. It felt like we were slowly going down. You didn't really know what was going on. You know, I've grew up in elevators my whole life. I've been stuck in elevators before. To me, it's no big deal. You know, you hang out a half hour, somebody gets you out. And so, you know, there was like 4 or 5 women, 3 or 4 men in there. It was like 8, maybe 9 people at the most. And I, you know, said, calm down, don't worry, it's the World Trade Center. Someone's, you know, gonna come and get us out. You know, read your paper, I'll drink my coffee, and let's hang out, and we'll get out of here. We'll go about our business. So the ladies were, you know, a little emotional, as I guess to be expected.
Upstairs, Mike's colleagues were now approaching the sky lobby on the 78th floor.
The main elevators go up from the ground level up to the 78th floor, and at that point you have to take different elevators. It's kind of a junction. There was also a junction in the staircase where you had to go down another flight of stairs. We had to walk down a hallway, and you had to go down to another staircase.
I distinctly remember looking back and saw my head trader, Harry, helping people come out of the old stairwell that we had just come out of while we were helping everybody get into the new stairwell. Then we let a few other people go ahead of us, and I just remember looking at Harry, and he looked at me for a split second, and I headed into the stairwell.
Below the sky lobby, it really started to get filled up. A lot more people were coming in, and the line that we had, this human chain that we had, was starting to get separated a lot more. And, you know, so you kind of clustered up 2, 3 people at a time. As more people started to come down, you found yourself talking to a lot more people. What floor were you on? Do you know what happened? No one knew what happened. We'd go down a few more floors, and you could smell jet fuel. There's a very distinct smell, like when you drive by the airport. It's like, oh, geez, that's really bad. It was a plane. And then I think somebody had mentioned, yeah, I heard on the radio or on the TV from one of the floors of people coming in that, in fact, it was a plane. We said, oh, geez, they must have flown a plane into the building. We really have to get out of here. All of a sudden, there's a door that's blocked. You know, so everybody bunches up. You know, it's like a parade going into a blind alley. The only way to go back down again on this particular floor was to get through a fire. And there was a gentleman from the Port Authority. And here he is, you know, with his shirt sleeves rolled up, with his tie loose, hosing a wall, suppressing a fire, so we could get by. We had to get in this really narrow hallway. Hoses everywhere, you know, water flowing. Smoke was building up pretty quickly, even on this flight, and there was a hole in the wall, gosh, about, you know, 3 by 2. And on the other side of it, you know, everyone takes a peek, and you never forget these quick glances you get. Just flame. I mean, flame on top of flame on top of flame. That whole other side of the wall was flame. And all he was doing is just suppressing it with the hose until the firemen could get there so we could get by. You know, it didn't ask for this, just hosing the wall down so everybody else can get out. And there's just no way in my mind that this guy got out, and you know, it wouldn't leave me for days. Because nobody from our floor or anybody else would have been able to get out on that level if it wasn't for this one guy. I mean, you know, your emotions run wild when you think of that.
While the May Davis employees were trying to escape from the North Tower with their lives, people working for Euro brokers in the South Tower were still safe. Nothing had yet happened to their building. But of course, they could see the devastation next door.
At 8:46, there was a boom, a noticeable loud noise. My lights buzzed above me, and I looked up at them. My head jerked upwards with that boom and the buzz of the light, and then in my peripheral vision, behind me and to my left, as I looked up at the lights, I turned around quickly, and the whole airspace outside my window, just right up against the glass, was filled with flame, which lasted for a couple of seconds. And it was an incredible sight to see. And then all of a sudden, there was just papers all sort of lit on the outside, like confetti, but larger pieces of paper burning, just floating in the air.
We didn't really know what happened. People were yelling and screaming and told us that, a plane had hit the other trade center, and you could see smoke pilfering through, blowing through. And so a lot of people ran over, and I, like myself, and they originally said it was a Cessna. And people said, a couple of people said, that's no Cessna.
When I reached the window to see what was happening, all I saw were the flames just exiting the building and all the papers flying out from this explosion. They were so close to the window that you can actually read what was on them, which I thought was so strange and so surreal, that you can actually read the papers up close.
I'm one of the dozen or 10 or dozen fire marshals on our floor, volunteer fire marshals. I jumped up, grabbed my flashlight, my whistle, put it around my neck, and went out of my office and started telling people, come on, let's go, there's been an explosion, out, and we did our best, as I did in my quadrant, and other fire marshals doing the same thing in their quadrants, to scoot people off the floor. And this went on aggressively for 5 minutes. We got a lot of people off the floor. I think there was about 280 people on the floor that day, and my guess is in the first 10 minutes, we got everybody out except for maybe 25 people.
The chief executive of Eurobrokers, Gil Scharf, was actually in London that day. His personal assistant had only just come from the London office to work for him.
I picked up the phone and dialed London. Gil wasn't there, but I spoke to my London boss, who I just recently left, and he answered the phone, and I can remember exactly what I said to him and what he said to me. I said, Rob, I said, something's happening next door. We're all okay, but we're leaving. And he said to me, something's happening next door. Fucking hell, Janice, a plane's gone into the building. Get the fuck out of there. I don't remember hanging up. I don't remember saying goodbye to him. I just remember running through the dealing floor. I find it incredible even today that here was a guy that was 3,500 miles away from me who knew what was happening less than 500 yards from where I was standing. We walked down probably, I don't know, 10 flights of stairs, and there was the first announcement, which said, this building is stable. I repeat, this building is stable. We have been asked not to evacuate World Trade Center 2 by the emergency services. They need the space on the plaza for the people being evacuated from one World Trade Center. So please stand still, note which floor you're on, and re-enter the building at one of the nearest re-entry point.
In fact, some people came back. My guess is about 25 of our people returned, such that at 9 o'clock-ish, we had probably 50, 55 people on the floor. I moved from the west side of the building near my office to the east side. That's where our trading operation was. It was a rather large trading room. It ran the entire east wall of the building from the south to the north. And people in that room, some of the brokers had walked up to the north wall because they could look up just a dozen floors and see the smoke and flames that were coming from the building beside them. Unfortunately, some of them could also see that people were leaning out the windows, and then people started jumping. Just a horrifying thought next door. But this was only, maybe 10 minutes after the first plane had hit. The intensity was so bad in that building.
We saw the plane on the other side of the building, and there was smoke everywhere, and people are jumping out the windows. Over there, they're jumping out the windows, I guess, because they're trying to save themselves. I don't know.
One of our employees, Susan Polio, I can actually credit her, I think, with being partly responsible for saving my life, had seen, for herself, the first person jump. She spun away from the windows and in tears ran back to me. She said, "Oh, Brian, Brian," she said, "it's terrible. People are dying. People are dying." I said, "Susan," I put my arms around her. I said, "Susan, I know it's a terrible tragedy. Come on, let's get you composed more." And we moved from the east side of the building down the hallway to the ladies' room, which was on the west side. And I credit Susan with perhaps saving my life. She moved me out of that trading floor to the west side of the building where I was fine when the second plane hit.
While I'm standing outside, now it's sort of a parking lot in the middle of the street, and everybody's out looking up at the Trade Center, and most people are just saying, "Oh, isn't that terrible? Oh, that's a shame. Oh, what's going on?" And I'm thinking, oh, it's more than a shame. It's my people up there. It's like, it's like you viewing your children, and you know that it's a real serious situation, and you're not quite sure if they're going to get out or not. I remember also standing there and saying, "Oh, God, I need one miracle. I need, I can't have everybody die up there." And for my own selfish reasons, I'm saying I can't put on a suit, 12 times or 13 times or how many people are up there looking at pictures, because I'm not quite sure who's ever up there is going to be able to get out. As I'm standing there and all of these things going through my mind, I'm watching a plane come in from the Statue of Liberty. And as the guy got closer and closer, I'm saying, "Oh, you know what? He must be here to drop water." So as this plane starts coming closer, I'm wondering, where's the water? It doesn't look like one of these water planes. And I remember the engines just roaring, and I can kind of hear this guy like hit the throttle. And all of a sudden, he starts to dip his wing.
There was like a double thump. There was a bang thump, and the ceiling collapsed around us. There were speakers and air conditioning ducts and lighting fixtures that just came down out of the ceiling. No electricity. It was sort of darkness other than a little bit of daylight coming through the window beside us. And I will tell you that the next 10 seconds were, for me, the most terrifying part of the day. The building, just as it fell apart, began to sway, and we went to my left toward the Hudson River, and we just kept going and going. Now, I was used to the building swaying. It was built to take wind, and we got used to a little bit of swing back and forth, slow, during windstorms, and it was no big deal. But this particular moment, this 10 seconds, we just went what seemed like yards to me. We just kept going, and I thought we were going over. It stopped, and then slowly came back. And that whole process took 10, 12 seconds. As soon as the building stopped moving, it just went one way and back. As soon as it stopped, I sobered up. I mean, from that moment on, I felt like I was in control. I wasn't concerned. I knew I was all right. I just knew that I had to leave.
The second plane, United Airlines Flight 175, with 65 people on board, struck the South Tower between the 78th and 84th floors. Eurobrokers was at the upper level of the impact, on the 84th floor itself. At the time of this second attack, Janice Brooks, who was already evacuating the building, was on the stairs, somewhere in the 70s.
All this happened so quickly, I mean, within seconds. And then there was this blood-curdling scream, a woman screaming. And everyone was looking at each other because there were, 2 or 3 women in the corridor. And it was none of us that were screaming. And then there were shouts of help, help, help. So we all piled to the top end, and people were bashing against the wall, against the door, trying to get us to open the door. And then there was, again, all these pieces of ceiling tiles, and just the door frame had warped, so we couldn't open it, and they were pushing from that side, and we were pulling from this side. Eventually, the door opened. This lady came through. It was the first lady that came through, and she had, her arm was cut, and it was like someone had got a knife, and she was cut from her shoulder down to her elbow, and it was just flapping, and there was blood splattering everywhere. And she was crying, and she had something wrong with her foot, and her face and her arms were all cut. And she was crying, and one of the guys took off his shirt and took off his T-shirt and wrapped it around her arm and tied underneath, so she was kind of like that. And then a man came through, and he was cut across the back of his neck, and all of his back of his T-shirt was drenched with blood. And another guy came through, and he had all glass in his chest, great big pieces, like someone had just stabbed him with a milk bottle or something, and people were just pulling the glass out of his chest. And then came the lady that was screaming, and she was saying, I can't see, and all her eye was just blood. And someone gave her some water, and she washed her face. But thank God it wasn't her eye that was cut. She had a gash on her forehead, and it just dribbled down to her eyes. And she had long, long dark hair, and when she shook her hair, glass just showered everybody.
At the time the second plane struck, Richie Fern was still up on Eurobroker's floor, the 84th. He'd been about to leave by taking the elevator.
I exited left, ran toward the first stairs that I can find, but noticing all the while that the ceiling had caved in. There was just lights and electrical things just hanging from the ceiling. The smoke was pretty thick, but I didn't see any flames. I touched the door for the emergency exit. It wasn't hot, so I entered it. There was smoke coming out, but at the time it didn't seem like I couldn't get through it. And I think I was panicking, and I just ran down anyway. I ran down, and the stairway was dark. There was no lights in the stairway. I followed the glow stripe on the stairway steps, and I just ran and ran down.
In the North Tower, the first to be hit, nobody at the impact site or above ultimately survived, because the first plane severed all the staircases, and there was simply no way down. 1,344 people died. In the South Tower, however, the second plane hit at an angle. Because of the tilt, it missed one of the staircases, the now legendary Staircase A, which miraculously remained intact from top to bottom. At the 84th story, the upper wing of the plane scythed right through Eurobroker's trading area. Of the 50 or 55 people on that floor, it's believed that fewer than 10 survived the initial impact. In the dark, it was pure luck that Brian and some of the first survivors he led out found Staircase A.
This group of 7 of us, we started down. We only went down 3 floors when we met a heavy-set woman coming up from below. She was halfway between the 80th and 81st floor, holding her hands up and said, "Stop, stop, stop," and kept walking up toward us. "We can't go down. You must go up. There's fire and smoke down below. We've just come off a floor in flames." And a debate started in this dark stairway. I had the flashlight, and whoever was speaking, I just moved the flashlight from face to face while they were talking. And people were, debating with her whether we should go. She was insistent that we go up. And in the midst of this debate, about 20 seconds into it, I heard a tap, 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 bang, 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 help, this small voice, but pleading voice in the darkness on the 81st floor, calling for help. "Help, help, I'm buried, I can't breathe, is anyone there? Help me." And I grabbed a coworker of mine who was on the floor, had come down the stairs with me, Ron DiFrancesco. I grabbed Ron by the shirt sleeve, and I said, "Come on, Ron, we got to get this fellow." The fire exit door had blown off the wall a bit. It was locked, but we could push the drywall back and squeeze between the drywall and the doorway and get onto the 81st floor. And as I stepped through that slot, I turned around and I saw my people starting to go back upstairs, led initially by David Vera. He had a walkie-talkie. He was also one of our fire marshals. He sort of pirouetted on the stairs and went up. Bobby Call and Kevin York each had a hand under the heavy-set woman's elbow. And they were good Samaritans. They were saying, "Come on, we're with you. It's okay. Calm down. We'll help you. Let's go up." and they started to ascend, this group of people.
I was in the stairwell going down with them, and, you know, we ran into some people who were telling us to go up, and there was some man who was screaming for help, and Brian went to him, and I went to help Brian, and I was overcome by the smoke and the heat.
At this time, Ron was completely overcome with smoke, and he ducked down and he backed off the floor, and I can still picture him squinting, and I don't remember him coughing so much, but he just was almost overcome by the smoke, and he sort of instinctively got lower and backed away. I started to remove debris, and this person was very excited the other side, you know, saying, "Oh, I've been saved. Oh, thank God you found me." And it was very emotional and excited. And I kept working and pulled some debris away until the last piece I couldn't move. And he couldn't move it from his side. And I told him, I looked through this slot, and I said, "You must jump. That's the only way out of this." And I said, "You jump." And I reached over the top, and this fellow jumped, and I missed him, and I couldn't grab on anything. He slid back down. I said, "You must do this." Jumped up again, and I grabbed onto him, and he says later, I just lifted him out like Superman. I mean, it was, I guess, adrenaline working, who knows what else. But he came up and over this last barrier, and we fell in a heap on the floor, and I said, "I'm Brian," you know, almost in sort of defense, get the kind of, he said, "I'm Stanley." I said, we're going to be friends forever," I said.
In the other tower, the North Tower, the May Davis employees had now come down about 12 floors into the mid-70s. There, they first came across firefighters, who by this stage had already climbed up nearly 1,000 feet.
I had a golf club in my hand. I said, well, I'm going to take this golf club. You might have to break a window or smash through something. And I told one of the kids to grab the fire extinguisher just in case. And I just kept it with me. You know, it felt good to have a golf club in your hand. And so I'm going down the stairs, and there's firemen coming up, and every single one of them had a joke about the golf club. Saw your ball 2 floors down, inside the lobby in the rough, right over there. You know, watch out for the hoses. Every single one of them had a joke about it, you know. Your ball's in the rough. Hey, your ball's 5 flights down. Wish I was going with you. And kidding around, joking, just trying to get everybody positive again. And, you know, you could just see it on their faces. This was the moment that they had trained for their whole lives, and to get all these people out was what they were doing.
When I saw the firemen, the fear in their faces, the way they looked at me, and they were like, "Take it easy, go slow." I saw the fear in their faces. I knew that there was something going on outside that I didn't know about. And I just saw their faces, and I was like, they were so afraid, but yet they kept going up.
I was very scared, more than anything, which I'm sure is a standard response. I was just afraid for my life. A lot of different thoughts went through my mind. Just, am I going to live? I'm young. There's no need for me to die. Just what the hell is going on here? What happened? Why did I take this job? Why am I this high up? Why am I not working on the first floor, the second floor? How is my girlfriend going to be? You know, she works, but the theory was I'll make enough money, we'll get married, and we'll be okay. How's my mom going to handle this? My dad died less than a year ago. He was a fireman, and he died because of his job. So how is she going to handle losing me also?
There's stairs with flowing water. There's stairs with smoke pumping out. There's stairs where you can smell the potpourri in the lobby, and it's spotless, and the air is clean as a whistle, and you can hear all the TVs blasting. Everyone had the TV up high. There were floors where there were people standing in their lobby landing, or the stairway landing, watching people go by. So we went through every kind of weird floor environment and staircase environment. You could see just glimpses of firemen setting up base stations on floors, and, you know, this one's clean, let's move everything up, and just hauling tons of gear up, hoses, you know, equipment, hauling it up. People passed out, people who were being helped down by other people, just faces beat red and flush. They were having a heart attack. And everyone was just pitching in to help them. All the way down, people were very positive.
For May Davis employees arriving after the planes had struck, the scene at the World Trade Center was something they would never forget.
I remember the smell. That's the first thing that hit me, the smell. smell like fire, like the building on fire. I come out of the train, and I see glass everywhere. So I'm like, what's going on here? You know, all the windows have been blown out. And my first intention was, I mean, I didn't really think about looking up at the building, because it's not what I expected. So I thought there was like a fire in another building. I was looking around, like, so where's the fire? And all these fire engines and people running around. What's going on? Then I finally looked up and I saw the building on fire, and I'm like, oh my God, this cannot be happening.
I'm thinking, my God, that building's on fire. Something terrible has happened. Now, meantime, everybody around, a crowd was gathering. Also, people were streaming out of 5 World Trade and 3 World Trade on the other side, people all coming towards us. So I backed away, trying to see if I could see where this was. And I realized it was on the upper floor of 1 World Trade. We were on the 87th. So I crossed the street, went over to Century, and I stood in front of Century's counting, trying to count. From the top up, I tried, but I couldn't because there was too much smoke, too much fire. I started from the bottom, counting up. I kept losing track. All around me, everybody was screaming, and there was a young lady. She was sort of to my left, crying. Oh, I want to go home, I want to go home. And I said, please be quiet, just go.
I hear everybody going, oh my God, look at this. And I turn around and I see people jumping out the building. And I think that was like the worst thing I've ever seen.
And I thought, oh my God, they're all up there. They'll all die up there, you know. And for some reason, I don't know why I thought I could help them. You know, I just felt that I needed to get up to the 87th floor, you know. And well, of course I couldn't, but I mean, I really did. I mean, for some stupid reason, I did try, you know. I don't know why I even thought that I could do anything, but I thought, my God, they'll all die up there, you know.
But people were alive. Halfway down the North Tower, Hong Zhu bumped into his colleague, May Davis's head trader, Harry Ramos. He was helping a man called Victor.
Harry was helping a man. He was very heavy set. I didn't know who he was. And I just thought Harry was helping him. I said, do you need a hand? No one said anything. I started giving him a hand to help Harry to move this man from 53rd down. And then Harry said, let me go ahead to see what's ahead of us. And I remembered Victor said, please don't leave me. And Harry came back to Victor, said, Victor, I'm with you all the time. And then he went ahead to see what was ahead of us. And a few minutes later, he came back. He said there was a nice office on 39th floor. I still remembered the name of that office is XL Credit Union. And XL starts with X. The lights, the air conditioning systems, the phone systems. The phone, I believe, we had difficulty dialing out, but there was incoming calls. And Harry moved a personal fan, a very small fan, to Victor, so that he could enjoy the fan.
At the lobby level, where fire chiefs were coordinating the rescue effort, Mike Jacobs was still stuck in the elevator.
I'm looking at the corner of the elevator, and I see like a faint light come through. And I'm like, I didn't say anything at first, and I keep on moving my head like this, trying to see if I'm actually seeing light, or am I seeing things? So I get my fingers, I get the doors open, and I see, the first thing we see is the firemen. And, you know, I just remember this look in their eyes of, you know, what are you people doing there, kind of. And, you know, I get excited. Everyone gets out of the elevator. I get excited a little because they're not helping us. And they, you know, I'm like, you know, what are you doing? You're not helping us. And as I'm saying this, I kind of realize what's going on around me. And I look around, you know, give a, you know, look everywhere, like, you know, what the hell is going on here? And to the left of me is the West Side Highway windows and the West Side Highway and everything. And there's windows, I don't know if, you know, in the World Trade Center, the window, I don't know how high they go, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 feet up. And it's all blown out, the windows. Everything is blown out. There's no one down there but firemen. Everything is just blown out in the whole lobby. And the lobby is it's a big lobby. And I'm like, as I'm saying this now, I'm realizing, you know, what the hell happened here? And the fireman's like, calm down, you know. I said, you know, what happened? Where do we go? You know, what happened? He wouldn't tell me what happened. He's like, go up to the World Financial Center. So we walk up the steps to the World Financial Center. That's the overpass over the West Side Highway to the World Financial Center. And when we get to the top of the steps, I see, you know, I'm with this lady that was in the elevator with me, and I'm looking, and I see on the window a pink smear. And I didn't know what it was, and I'm looking at it with this inquisitive look, and me and the lady are like turning our heads like, what is that? And we take a few steps over, and all of a sudden I see splattered bodies all over the place. And I'm like, a lady falls at my feet, and I realized the pink smear was blood and guts on the windows. And at that point, my friend who I grew up with, lived in Florida, but he was staying in my apartment, gets through to me on my cell phone. Now, no cell phones were working, no nothing. It's a miracle this guy gets through to me on my cell phone. Calls me up, says, Mike, get out of the buildings. Both, you know, 2 planes hit the buildings. And at that point, that's when I knew what happened. 2 planes had hit the building. I was like, oh my God, call my mom, tell her I'm okay, I'm leaving now, click.
Steve Sherast and Joanne Capestro were now reaching the bottom of the stairs. They came out 1 floor above the lobby at the mezzanine level, where there were views out onto the concourse between the 2 buildings.
There's cops, Port Authority, you know, firemen, all kinds of rescue people in lines just waving you faster and faster as you went. Keep moving, don't run, but get going. Don't look out the window. And I remember 4 or 5 people said, don't look out the window. So of course you look out the window like you're a kid. And we spied out the window really quickly. And the impression of that is pieces of bodies as far as the eye could see. You know, there's the big plaza out between the buildings. There's a big globe in the middle for anyone who's ever visited. Big plaza, a couple hundred yards across. And stuff is falling and falling and falling. And there's just chunks of stuff all over the place. And on any given day, you might not have known what that was. On this day, you knew it was people. You could just tell it was people. And it was just hideous.
I look, and what I saw was complete devastation. It was a war zone. Dead bodies. I saw a man and a woman where I would sit every day. I used to go to lunch and read my book on the concourse level with a very good friend of mine. And that day, it was just a coincidence that I came out that exit. When I came out that exit, there was a man and a woman embraced with a piece of metal through them. I fainted on the spot.
The exact verbiage was, holy shit, run.
I remember thinking that was when I was going to die.
It was eerie silence, just silence, nothing. And that's when I thought I was dead.
The place where I'd worked for 27 years was gone. It just made no sense.
shockwave went right through you. You could feel it. It knocked a lot of people to the ground. I think I got knocked over, at least onto my desk.
All you saw was fireballs. I mean, right in front of you, smoke. It just wrapped around. We had all windows, so you just sort of wrapped around the whole building.
There was like a double thump. There was a bang, thump, and the ceiling collapsed around us. There were speakers and air conditioning ducts and lighting fixtures that just came down out of the ceiling.
As the survivors of the attack were trying to escape from the two towers, other people were still arriving for a normal day's work.
As I'm walking up the steps from the subway onto the street, the first thing I remember is seeing people's feet. People going crazy, and I could, as I'm walking up the steps, I can see their feet and then their legs. And then I hear sirens and ambulances, fire trucks, just a lot of noise that you don't normally hear. People running everywhere. And I thought, oh my Lord. And I knew there was something awful had happened. I could see the smoke, more smoke than flames. And I thought anyone who was, certainly anyone who was in the building on those floors, from 78 to 84, we were on 84, anyone who was there couldn't possibly have survived what happened.
But most of the Eurobroker's staff had actually started evacuating before the second plane hit, and were now making their way down the stairs.
As we were walking down, it was really slippy and slidey and really dusty, and everyone was coughing. After about 6 flights of stairs, it was clear. There was no smoke, there was no debris, there was just absolutely nothing. It was really, really quiet, and all you could hear were people coughing and crying. The lady in front of me had the bad arm and had the bad foot, and she was still crying, and she kept saying that she was moving that weekend, and that she wouldn't be able to help her husband, and we just kept saying, look, we think it might be okay. Got down to probably about the 30th floor, and the lady in front was obviously having trouble walking. And as she was walking, her foot was really bleeding badly. And I remember at one stage looking down at my left foot and seeing blood oozing through my toes because I was walking in her footsteps. And I remember pulling my shirt away from my body and saying to this guy who I still didn't know, like, I've got blood on my shirt. I just stood still and just was, oh my God, I've got blood on my shirt. He came over to me and just put his arms around me and said, look, it's okay. It's not your blood. We have to keep going. And I just stood there and I said, I don't even know your name. And his name was Bob Mahan.
While Janice Brooks was down in the 30s, Richie Fern was still up in the mid-70s.
I saw the people queuing up to going down the stairs. They were single file going down the stairways, and they were kind of on the left-hand side. I started going down the right-hand side. I was spooked. I started running down the stairs ahead of everybody.
Stanley and I started down. I didn't know where Ron had gone. And we started down. The first, I'm going to guess, 6 floors were rather difficult. A lot of drywall had blown in on the stairs. Fire stairs were double thickness in drywall. The inner layer had blown in many places and was lying either flat on the stairs, making it like a slippery slide because the sprinkler system was dribbling water on things and we were sort of sloshing through water that was pouring over the stairs. Or the drywall was leaning against railings, and we'd had to, move it out of the way or go under it. And by the time we got to, I'm guessing, the 74th floor, we broke into fresh air. The lights were on. It was normal conditions. It was amazing how the transition happened in the space of one floor. We kept going.
I heard on the way down, they were Jerry, who works in our security area, working. He was trying to talk on the radio to the people that were left upstairs, trying to negotiate a rescue. He was talking to Dave, who was in a communications group. Dave was saying that the smoke was filling up. We have hurt people, we need help. Jerry was trying to assure him on the ground that help is on its way. They're on their way.
On the 68th floor, we came to the only person we would see in the whole descent on the stairway, one of my co-workers and another fire marshal, a fellow named Jose Marrero. He was carrying a walkie-talkie. He was walking up the stairs, and I said, Jose, where are you going? He said, I can hear Dave Vera up above. And Dave's one of the people that left me earlier. He said, I can hear Dave up above. He's on the walkie-talkie. He's helping people, and he needs some help. I'm going up to help him. Now, Jose had gone down into the, I'm guessing, the 40s, down into the, probably that low, helping some of our people to exit the building. Great guy, Jose.
While Jose and others were selflessly helping the injured upstairs, security guard Jerry Banks on the ground floor was becoming increasingly desperate.
I'm looking up, and as I'm looking up, I just seen flames, people jumping, and I'm screaming over the radio, Mr. Marrero, you and those people got to get out of there. And he says to me, no, I have injured people up here. I can't leave. He said, I can't leave. He said, we're trying to make it out of here. I can't leave. So I'm going all around. I'm looking at the fire department. I'm like, sir, there's people on the 84th floor still up there. I was like, please, somebody go up on the 84th floor. And they was radioing to other people, telling them, hey, we still got people on the 84th floor.
The most remarkable survival in the entire September the 11th story was probably that of Ron DiFrancesco. Overcome by smoke on the 80th level, Ron decided to go up, higher into the building.
I was overcome by the smoke, so I decided to get out. Get up. I couldn't, I didn't help Brian or that man. I went in search of fresh air, and we were looking. I was looking to get out of the stairwell. It was filling with smoke, and we were climbing and climbing and climbing, and every floor was locked, which sort of panicked me. But in hindsight, it was a good thing. Yeah, I guess we got up to about the 91st floor, and at that point I realized there was probably no way to get out there. So I started heading back down with a colleague of mine, and when we got down, I guess around the 80th, 79th floor, there's a little landing, and people were starting to lie down and get close to the ground to get a bit of air. People were starting to go to sleep. It's not a nice story. I started lying down on the ground, too. Some air. And then the miracle happens, Don't mean to sound like a Bible thumper, but somebody helped me out. And, I got up enough strength, and I don't know. I left a lot of colleagues up there, though, so.
So Ron survived, despite initially going up from the 84th floor as high as the 91st. In fact, he, Brian, and Richie were the only three from the upper impact site or above who survived at all. Everyone else, 599 people, died. This was despite staircase A being intact. Presumably, they either didn't know it was there, or for some reason, couldn't get to it. Near the bottom of the South Tower, Janice Brooks was now nearing the end of her journey.
It was about the 8th floor. The lady in front with the arm and the foot just stood there and just started crying her eyes out and said, I can't go on anymore. And she was shaking and she felt sick and her foot hurt and her arm hurt. And she just said, just go and just leave me. Just get someone to come for me. I can't go on anymore. And Bob just said, look, you know, we have to leave. You have to get out of here. So he said, we're not going to leave you. And he gave her a piggyback down the rest of the stairs. 8, 10 flights of stairs, and he carried her right to the end.
In fact, despite the terrible death toll, 99% of everyone below the impact sites, between 20 and 25,000 people, escaped successfully from the Twin Towers. But for some, it was a slow process. Back up on the 44th floor, Brian, Clark and Stanley had now encountered a security guard keeping a lone vigil over an injured man. They promised to try and find help.
We got to the 31st floor, and we went in on the 31st floor to make phone calls. I called home. We got into somebody's conference room. I don't know whose floor it was. I called home, told my wife, and of course this is, I guess, 20 to 10, I think was the time she recounted later. And then I called 911, which is the emergency number, to tell them about the man on the 44th floor that was wounded and the security guard that was tending to him. Get a medic, get a stretcher on the 44th floor. I had a little bit of frustration in that process because they didn't handle my call very quickly. They put me on hold, put me through to somebody else. Put me on hold again, put me through to a third person, and I got insistent at this time. I said, I'm going to tell you this story once. And I told them about the person on the 44th floor and how they needed help, of course. And I said, and that's all, I'm not going on hold, and I put the phone down. But I was probably on the phone with 911 for 3 or 4 minutes. Very frustrating experience. And of course, I didn't know time's elapsing. No concept that the building's about to do what it's going to do.
As Brian and Stanley made their way out of the South Tower, Richie Fern was already walking up Broadway.
We kept walking up to Broadway. When we got to that area, we noticed a whole bunch of group of Eurobroker people just standing outside J&R electronics store. I just couldn't walk anymore. I knew I was outside. I knew I was relatively safe. I just went to the curb, and I just fell on the curb. All the time watching the Eurobroker people, that I knew I didn't want to leave them. I heard them talking. They were saying that they wanted to get everybody together. They were going to go to a bar, and they were going to get everybody together and go to the bar down the block to see who was there and who was not there. So they started to walk away, and I figured I'd better follow them because I didn't want to get separated. I was following them down the street, and I decided that I'd rather call my wife than go to a bar. So I went to a place where I get my hair cut. Antonell grabbed me, pulls me inside, just sits me down. I asked if I was okay. And and all the barbers came up to me and they started helping me and wiping me down with wet cloths. And I just kept saying, you have to call my wife and let her know that I'm okay. And, you know, she assured me she would. And they continued wiping me down. And at the same time, after I regained some of my composure, I was listening to the radio upstairs as to what was going on, and things were getting worse for Dave and everybody up there. They were talking to Jerry downstairs, saying that the situation was getting bad, smoke was getting really thick, and they needed help. Antonella was finally was not able to get my wife on the phone. You couldn't make any long-distance phone calls. But I was able to call my mother in Brooklyn to let her know I was okay, and for her to please call my wife.
Back in the South Tower, Ron DiFrancesco was still on the landing around the 80th floor and had only just managed to lift himself off the ground.
It was full of smoke, and you're feeling your way blind, and then I, felt some drywall, and needless to, when I realized it was the wall that had caved in on top of the stairs, so I had broke through that and basically slid down the stairs on my rear, and when I got down, I guess to about 77 or something, that's when I got hit by the wall of fire. All the drywall was burning at that point. Once I got down, I guess I ran through that. And I don't know if that's where I got my burns or not, but once I got down about 76, I guess, 75, it was pretty peaceful. It was very white and bright, and water was flowing down the stairs. I came across 3 firefighters, probably in the 30s, and I had explained to them that I was having trouble breathing. And I don't think at that point I was burnt that badly, because if I was, I imagine one of them would have come down with me, but they just told me to go downstairs and I can get some help down there. When I got down, I went out. You walk right out. The stairwell led to the courtyard, so the side of the courtyard was pretty horrific.
What did you see?
Well, you ever been to war? It was hell. It was like full of I'm sure you've seen it in the news. It's people and debris and people and
At the same time as Ron was exiting the South Tower, in the North Tower, Dave Donovan and Jason Braunstein were finally making it out.
You make your way from the exit around, and there's doors, revolving doors that take you into the plaza in between the 2 buildings, and that's where all the FBI, the police were standing, blocking you, because that's where all the debris was. That's where all the people were falling. And, they keep yelling, walk to the right, don't look to your left, don't look to your left, and like every other person, when someone tells you don't look to the left, you look to the left. And that was probably the most horrific thing I've probably seen in my life, and hopefully ever will see in my life. Look out into the plaza where the Globe was. There's body parts everywhere, burning pieces of the plane. I remember seeing plane seats with bodies still in them, missing certain body parts. At the time, I didn't remember most of it, but as time's progressing, more and more starting to come back to me. And I remember seeing a pregnant woman hit the ground when she jumped from about 100 floors up. And when she hit, she just, like a watermelon dropping off the roof, and you could see the baby come out with the cord. And that's something that sticks with me. I don't think I could forget that.
It didn't look like what was supposed to be there was there. Nothing was there. It was transported to a different place. And Dave was he's very calm. He was just, walk, you'll be fine. Don't worry about what's out there. Worry about you. Let's go. We'll talk outside. As I was coming out of the glass doors, I could see everyone running. The policemen, the firemen, the EMTs, the FBI. And you see these guys running away, you know something's not right. And I looked across the street into the Millennium Hilton, which is about 50 stories high. It's a glass building. And you could see Tower 2 next to us, halfway down, starting to collapse. And we were only about 100 yards away.
when you walk out the door, the building still overhangs about 10 feet, so you're still kind of protected, per se. Jason took off running. I didn't know he took off till the next day. I thought he got buried. I became like a deer in headlights. I just froze, jumped in the corner under that overhang, and I just started praying to Jesus for protection, to save me. And someone else jumped next to me, someone who I never met. He started doing the same thing, telling me to pray to Jesus, and I remember saying, I already am, I've been. You know, it's good, Jesus, Jesus. And then someone jumped on top of us to cover us. You know, another FBI agent, apparently. Then the building came down, and the big cloud came right at us. I mean, that overhang saved my life, because the steel beams were landing, like I said, about 10, 15 feet away from me.
So a couple emergency workers on the sidewalk just start looking up. And at that point, the exact verbiage was, holy shit, run. I don't know what happened, I just ran. I didn't ask questions, I didn't want to know. At first, I just assumed that was the second plane coming in, because to me, that's what it sounded like. It sounded like the plane had hit the building. At that point, I proceeded to just run. I ran across the street. There was a small church there. And I was just getting, I turned back around as I was running up the block, and I saw what looked like a wave, just a giant gray wave, just coming down. I didn't, like I said, I thought it was the plane hitting the building, and you just every once in a while see a flicker of silver, or just metal, just pieces flying everywhere, and it was another rumble. It was just a loud, deafening rumble, and you just turned back around, and I ran up about halfway up the block. At that point, I proceeded to get as far under a car as I could.
I ran so fast that people were pushing everybody. I got to the corner. Once I got to the corner, I made a left turn, and the first car, there was a car there. And the car was on fire, and they were saying, don't hide under the cars, they're gonna blow, they're gonna blow. I go, listen, if I'm gonna go, if God's gonna take me, let him take me. I ran to the second car. When I ran to the second car, a priest grabbed me. I was in front of the church, in St. Pete's Church. The priest grabbed me, and I was like, Father, I'm saved. I go, please tell me I'm gonna be okay. Tell me I'm gonna be okay. He was like, you're gonna be fine. I says, I'm not gonna make it. And as I'm screaming, the debris is going into my throat. The priest is saying the Hail Mary. I'm cursing. I'm like, I lost my cell phone. I got myself so scared that I must have knocked myself unconscious, because once the tower fell, you heard boom, 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 the metal hitting the car.
Once all the falling stopped, you had the cloud, and it was just pitch black. You couldn't see anything, and it was eerie silence, just silence, nothing. And that's when I thought I was dead. I thought I was dead. But I kept hearing the guy praying to Jesus, so I know I'm still here. And, you know, we stood up. We couldn't see anything. Luckily, this FBI agent had a flashlight, so he, you know, we grabbed his arm, he let us out. And when we got out, right by the post office there on Church Street, I started throwing up. I was throwing up, and he said, guys, I have to go help other people. Walk up towards Broadway, you'll get help there. And then he just disappeared into the cloud. And, you know, I look back, I don't realize at the time, was this guy an angel? Did Jesus hear our prayers and send someone to help us?
I was having problems breathing. Just the dirt and the dust in the air just was all in my eyes, my mouth, my throat. Because like I said, I started to scratch at my mouth, my tongue, like just anything to breathe. And it was really upsetting at that point, because like I said, I thought I was gonna, you know, to make it out of the building alive and just die out on the street wasn't something I really wanted to do. At that point, I reached into my bag, just hoping, and I had a can of iced tea that I bought in the morning. It's cheaper to buy things by my house, and it was in the city, and wasn't exactly rolling in the money, so I decided to just buy the iced tea in the morning. I just luckily had it in my bag. So I proceeded to pour the iced tea into my eyes, my mouth, and just anything so I could see and breathe again. It stung and it hurt, but I was alive, so the little bit of pain was fine with me.
Everything was quiet, and everything was white. And then I got up, and I turned around, and I looked at the lady next to me. She went to help a woman, and she went to pick her up by her arm, and only her arm came up. So she was just laying there dead. All you heard was, help me. Where those people were, I guess it was all the people that were laying in the street that I walked over after I got out from underneath the car, because everybody around me was dead. How I made it out is a miracle.
After his escape from the South Tower, as Ron DiFrancesco ran away, he was hit by a fireball, apparently caused by the building collapsing. He was probably the last person out, alive.
I saw the fireball and heard a loud noise, and that's all I remember. And I woke up 6 days later at St. Vincent's. I got hit on the head, and I had a big gash in my head here, and I don't know, I was in the ICU for 6 days, 5 or 6 days, and I wasn't really conscious, and I had third-degree burns on both my arms. And
Richie Fern escaped the tidal wave of the collapse by ducking into a nearby building.
We all gathered in a stairway in the back of the building, and it had these little windows, and all you see is just very gray outside. It was almost like dusk out. And we just sat there. I tried to make phone calls, and it was just still, you couldn't use your cell phone. After a while, I was able to get through on my cell phone. I was able to call my wife's cousin in Brooklyn to let him know that I was coming to the store to see him, and that I'm okay. That I didn't get hurt in the building falling either. And then, after sitting there for a bit, Jerry came back on the radio. This time, nobody was answering him. This time, he was just calling and saying, "Is anybody out there?" And this was the first time I spoke on the radio. I told Jerry, there's nobody. Just go home. Get away from the building. Get away from the area. And he said, "Okay, Mr. Fern, that's what I'm going to do."
I'm calling Jose, Mr. Chuck Dick, David Vega over the radio. I'm like, please, anybody pick up if you dare, please pick up. And then that's when Richie Fern came on the radio, and he says, "Jerry." I was like, "Yes, who's this?" He was like, "This is Richie Fern. Listen to me closely. Go home. Get away from the buildings before you get hurt. Go home." And that's what happened.
Steve Chutnick, Steve Dorff, and Jose Marrero all worked with Jerry in the security department.
Those three men are the greatest role models that I ever had. As far as with Jose, yes, he was my boss. He was very calm, never, ever yelled at me. I mean, polite. Whenever he see you, he say hello, bright smile, everything. That's the greatest man in the world. That's my hero for September 11th.
This was the scene immediately after the collapse of the South Tower. Although the second to be hit, it was the first to fall. May Davis employee Adam Mayblum was still in the stairwell of the North Tower.
That's the only time I feared for my life. I felt this rumbling from above. The whole building was shaking. And of course, we had no idea what it was. We didn't understand that the other building had been hit by a plane. Nobody knew that. And we certainly didn't know that it was collapsing at that very moment. We were certain that it was our building and that it was basically our stairwell which was coming down upon us. That's how it sounded. And then slowly the sound and the rumbling just subsided. We managed to move out onto the 3rd floor in the lobby. All the lights were out at this point. Somebody had a flashlight, and we passed it up ahead. But there were so many people that we had to tell everybody, put your hand on the shoulder of the person in front of you and move out into the stairwell. And move out into the hallway, because you couldn't see. I mean, it was pitch black. And we came out into what I thought at that point was a construction site within the building. It was this giant open space that was filled with bright light, yet at the same time this chalky powder, so you really couldn't see a few inches in front of you. And then I realized that it was not, I had actually thought it was some vacant floor that they were just building out the space, and it really was. It was the upper level of the lobby of One World Trade Center, which would walk out, I don't think it was called the Promenade, but it was the area where the fountain was. And I was just so shocked by that when we went out the revolving doors, it looked as if it was a scene from a nuclear war.
On the 39th floor, Hong Zhu was still with Harry and the man they were helping, Victor, when the South Tower fell.
It gave the World Trade Center 1 the same effect, like it was hit again. And some metal stuff sticking out of the wall, and there was some visible structural damage. And then we said, we got to get out of here. Victor said, just to keep saying, I couldn't move, my legs couldn't move. Harry asked him if his heart was okay. He said, yes, his heart was okay. And then I shouted at him, just go, what are you doing? And at that time, I believe we were moving slowly. And it's about 36th floor. And we met some firemen. And one of the firemen looked at me and said something which I would never forget. And I'm grateful to this fireman for the rest of my life. I don't know his name, even today. What he said is, who the fuck are you? Shouting at him. You, get the fuck out of here, now. And that was the moment I finally just left Harry, left Victor and the fireman, and just ran down. I believe I got out of the building and then walking towards the river. At that time, I heard people screaming first, and then I looked back. Tower 1 was collapsing.
Janice Brooks was already at home in her apartment in a building very near the Trade Center.
I just saw this big black cloud, and it was like someone was on the roof of the building unrolling a carpet or something. And I just watched, it almost in slow motion, as one by one all the windows were blacked out, and it just suddenly crept around like it was in slow motion until it was just black. And I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. And that, I remember sitting down, and I remember thinking that was when I was going to die. I was by myself, and that was what upset me so much. I was going to die, and I was by myself. I the time in the World Trade Center, I never thought I was going to die. I thought I was quite safe once I got out there. But after a while, the black went to grey, went to light grey, and then just went to swirling paper and dust. The television never came back on, but the phone line, for some strange reason, did. And I had started having phone calls from people telling me that the tower, 2 towers had gone. And I remember looking out of the window. One side of my apartment had stunning views of the Statue of Liberty and the harbour, and it was a beautiful, beautiful day. And out of that side was this wonderful summer's day, and outside this side was mayhem and chaos and people dying. And I remember opening the window and looking out. I couldn't believe the towers had fallen.
Brian Clark was already some distance away, walking uptown with Stanley, the man he'd saved. They'd exchanged business cards.
We walked and sort of marveled, and we were in this crowd, and then all of a sudden, very mysteriously, Stanley and I got separated. I didn't know where he'd gone, and I stopped, and I put my hand in the air, and I went running back and forth almost frantically, "Stanley, Stanley," yelling for him. No response. And I thought for a moment that, oh my gosh, you know, this Stanley fellow wasn't real. He was a guardian angel of sort. And that feeling swept over me for 10 seconds. And then I remembered the business card. And I pulled it out of my pocket, and he was real. Now, I realize it would have been a wonderful story if there was no business card there. But Stanley was real, and I knew I could get a hold of him again.
Brian was unaware of the collapse of the 2 towers and carried on walking uptown along the East River until he was able to catch a ferry home.
The ferry took off, and the people were yattering away about this adventure, that adventure. Some people were with colleagues, others were total strangers, and everybody had a story. And I listened. I saw some people that I knew, but not workmates of mine, but, you know, people that I'd commuted with from a distance. And we started comparing notes, and everybody's talking, and we went around the southern tip of the island, and as we came up the Hudson River, the wind had been blowing. You go north up the Hudson River there. The wind had been blowing from north to south. We couldn't see where the Trade Center was at all. Then we broke into fresh air, you know, not cloudy, and we could all see for the first time that both towers were down. The ferry boat went silent, just absolutely silent. Nobody could believe what they were looking at, because this was our first knowledge of what had happened. It was a frightening sight, because you were just trying to process what this meant. I'd worked at the Trade Center for 27 years. I've been with Eurobrokers 30 years, almost 30 years, and the place where I'd worked for 27 years was gone. It just made no sense.
In the immediate aftermath of the tower's collapse, no one knew who was dead and who was alive. Initial estimates were that 10,000 people had died. The chairman of the May Davis Group went to a friend's home to begin the grisly process of accounting for his staff in the North Tower.
Is everybody dead? Who's alive? Let me make a confirmation. Who's in the building? Who wasn't in the building? Where is everybody? And let me figure out, you know, what my casualty list is. And that's when I started to write my list. At that point in time, I still couldn't make any telephone calls out, but my phone was ringing off the hook, where I would send people into certain areas to try to get a sighting past 1031. Did you see them? Did you hear from them? Did you call their cell phone? Is there any confirmation past 1031 or whatever time that they are alive, and what's going on?
In Newark, New Jersey, Harry Ramos's family began to fear the worst.
During the evening time, when it got close to 7, 8 o'clock, and the phone was still ringing, but everyone had seemed to be out from May Davis. I believe there was 13 employees at May Davis, and everyone was out. Everyone was safe, except for Harry. And I was told that he was seen on the 34th floor, And Han was out, finally out, and that's when I finally came to understand that it's a big possibility that Harry wasn't going to come home.
By the next day, it became clear that of the 14 May Davis employees on the floor in the North Tower when the plane struck, 13 had survived. Harry alone had died. Victor, the man he'd been helping, had also died. It's presumed that Harry was still with him when the building imploded. For Euro brokers, the death toll was much higher.
The day after it happened, I went to work on the help desk. And that was when I found out just how many people we had lost. Initially, it was around 80. Eventually, we went back and forth and were able to account for people and got the number down to around 60. And it went up and down a little bit. Some names were added to the list. Some names were taken off the list because they'd been accounted for. But it obviously stayed at 61.
I went back to work the next day at the offices that we'd set up in Madison Avenue. And I remember the first time walking into the office and being given the piece of paper with the 60 names on. I remember looking down and seeing people that I'd spoken to that morning or I'd made plans to go out with later that week. There was all these people missing. And I think that is when it started to really sink in that this was real. I hadn't dreamt it. I had blood on my shirt and I knew it was real.
It's a nice story that, the last person out of the building, and I got out and basically physically unscathed, I have some burns and stuff, but I am, I'm lucky. That's it. I'm no hero. I'm nothing. I'm lucky, For all intents and purposes, I should be dead. So.
One of the guys was a real friend of mine, and he was one of the last people that I saw on the floor. And I don't know why I didn't ask him to come with me. But I didn't. It would have taken me seconds. And I don't understand why I didn't ask him to come. I don't think I'll ever understand. And I don't think I'm ever quite going to be able to forgive myself.
I don't feel bad for my colleagues, really, because I do believe they're in a better place. I feel bad for their families, because how do you tell so many young kids, that your dad's not coming back and we can't find him and, and never, to have a proper burial and to say goodbye and stuff. It's like, to go to work and then be snatched out of your lives as if your dad never existed,
There's a real mixture of people's emotional recovery. The physical recovery has been fine, but the emotional recovery of some people is varied, or with many people is varied. We have been very fortunate that we have been able to be in temporary space where we can all assemble. In those first few weeks, it was essential because every now and then somebody would break down, but 3 or 4 people would be right beside them to comfort them and support them. And then it would be somebody else's turn. We all went through those cycles. We had on-site counselors for more than 2 months. At one time, I think there was even as many as a dozen counselors on the floor at the same time. We had group sessions, we had individual sessions, multiple sessions. Some people use the services more than others. It was available. That was a comfort. I think we've done a very good job of bouncing back.
Some of those who survived September the 11th still have reminders of that day. Jerry Banks still has the radio on which he talked to Dave Vera and Jose Marrero. Poignantly, that morning they had swapped radios, so the one he used actually belonged to Jose. And remarkably, 4 months after the disaster, Richie Fern had these documents returned to him by the New York Police Department. They'd been found at the bottom of 1.5 million tons of rubble. The rescue workers had also found his business cards, still carrying his World Trade Center address. Jason Braunstein still has the bag he escaped with, which contained his iced tea. And Joanne still has the shoes she ran away in. 5 months before the disaster, Owen May had this video made showing their offices on the 87th floor.
Zurich called again, and I got reports.
Still find calls. What are we going to do about Apollo?
Owen, what do you want to do?
Oh, did you satisfaction me?
Sure.
At the end of the cleanup operation, salvage workers found the May Davis sign, also buried under the rubble.
As a company, I mean, you know, this is Wall Street. A lot of egos, a lot of positioning, and you know, little mini battles throughout the day. But you know, we're as thick as thieves now because of what we've been through. So I think as a company, it's been good. So you know, life gets better. I have a happy family. We're all wonderfully in love with each other. So we're very thankful of all that.
But for Steve, everyone at May Davis, and most especially for his wife, the memory of Harry Ramos continues to loom large.
Harry was a comedian. He was a great father, a great husband. Never angry. He'd always be in a very good mood and always a smile. Nothing really bothered him. He was a very easygoing person and a good husband. Never said no to me. He tried to please me in every way possible. And we were married for 16 years, and I honestly believe that things happen in life for a reason. And I didn't have my first child till 10 years into marriage. And I wonder why. Now I understand why it took me 10 years to have my first son. And it's because I look at it this way. God wanted me to enjoy my life with Harry. And we had a solid, good marriage. And we enjoyed ourselves for 10 years before we had children. So, and I can say that Harry was a great man. He's going to be he's going to be missed by many people, and it's a big loss to all of us. And unfortunately, there's many husbands that are gone, and many fathers, and many brothers, and this was not only my loss, but I know that it was the nation's loss too. It was terrible for everyone, and I'll live my life day by day, and remember all the good times. As I tell everyone, keep Harry alive. Joke about him. I tell Owen and I tell the people at work, talk about him every day and bring him back and keep him alive in your hearts and in your thoughts and in your prayers. But Harry was terrific. I'll never find another Harry.